Alright, so time for another fancy little trans rant that will probably have people be like, why the fuck are you talking about this? Because no one actually cares about what trans people have to say. I don't know why, but it's dumb. It's just a fact of life. Anyway, so I'm in a creative writing class again, as you do when you're a fucking English major and you like writing. And so there is a guy who's also trans in the class who just so happens to sit next to me. And that's great, that's rad. But the rest of the class, as far as I know, is cis. There's some, like, gay people in there, but they're all cis as far as I know. I may be wrong, but. So we had, like, the poetry thing today because we were doing a poetry thing, as you do in creative writing classes. And we all read our poems out loud, and we all got like little mini critiques that would later be fleshed out in like actual written down critiques that we could read later when we rewrote our poetry for the final. So for mine, which was surprisingly about being trans, specifically about being a closeted trans person in the South, I read mine out loud, as you do, and I got the wow, this was really intense, wow, this was really deep kind of stuff, and then like that was it. People were just like, oh, well, that was a poem. Like, it was a tangible feeling of, I can't relate to this. And I talked to the teacher afterwards, because the poem after mine was a girl talking about, like, colorism, which, again, totally good thing to write a poem about, but, like, the response she got was, like, people having in-depth discussions about, like, colorism and like interracial issues and stuff like that, and it was great, and I'm glad we had that discussion, but I was kind of like, wow, okay, my sister at it again. Also, one of the guys in my class referred to me as a she, and I'm like, you missed the point entirely. So like I talked to the teacher after the class about it. I was like, I feel like people didn't get my poem, because there wasn't, like, my poem was calling out cis people on like being ignorant about trans issues and like not understanding that trans people are still people regardless of how they present or how far out of the closet they are. And the girl after me was like, we're still black no matter the color of our skin, or like if we mix race or whatever like that. And I was like, I feel like people didn't get mine as much. And she was like, well, that's probably because the girl after you's poem was like meant to be performed, whereas yours was meant to be read, which valid. I don't really write slam poetry just because I hate speaking in front of people and I don't ever want to have to do that. So, I mean, she had a point, but this is not the first time I've presented like trans literature that I've written, or that trans literature has been presented, and also with gay stuff, but most of the trans stuff where cis or straight people will be like, wow, this is really deep and really good, and then like end it there, and they don't like have a discussion about it. And I mean, I get it, if you don't know enough about trans or gay issues, you don't want to start a discussion that you can't actually have, because then you'll look like you don't know what you're talking about, and that's not fun. But I think part of it is cis people are just uncomfortable with like trans people in general, and like even if they say, oh, I'm an ally or whatever, it's just like there's part of being trans is that it's not fun. Like, yes, there are great parts of being trans, like when you actually get to start hormones, or like when you find another trans person and you can like talk about your experience together, or like when someone genders you correctly and you're like, fuck yeah, you may think I'm 12, but at least you think I'm a boy. That's all I give a shit about. I don't care if you think I'm 8. I don't give a fuck. Just see me as a man, that's it. So stuff like that, that's great, that's fun, that's the fun part of being trans. But then like, that's not how we're seen normally. We're normally seen as weird, as outcasts, as like people in the wrong clothing or wrong body or whatever, and that's what I was writing about. I was writing about like what it's like to essentially be a spy on the worst mission ever, because no one believes you're a spy even if you tell them, kind of thing. and people were just like, they didn't have any questions or comments or anything. They were just like, yeah, I can relate to this. Yeah, I can understand this. I'm like, I don't think you can, because like here's the major difference between like I'm having issues saying this because I'm white and I don't want people to think that I'm like racially ignorant or something. So if this is out of line, I apologize, but like if you're a person of color, your parents are a person of color as well, unless you're adopted, in which case that's a different story. But it means like when you hit the age where you suddenly realize that, oh, there are people who hate me because of something I can't change about myself, aka my skin color, you can go home and you can ask your mom and dad and be like, why do they hate me? Like, what did I do wrong? And your parents will tell you you did nothing wrong, that they're just people out there who are like that. Whereas with being gay or trans, like, I can't do that. Like, I had to figure that out for myself, why people hated me for being me, or why people thought I was disgusting or wrong or like fucked in the head or any of that stuff. Like, I had to figure that out on myself. And when you're 13 or 14 years old and you realize your parents are never going to love you as you are, that's hard, and that sucks balls. And then you have to spend the next like 4 or 5 years of your life hiding yourself. And then you also have people being like, well, you should be able to come out, and if they don't appreciate you, that's their loss. And I'm like, okay, yeah, there's a difference between not appreciating me and like literally making my life hell. Like, I've had social media accounts that are mine. I've been harassed on them because my parents have found them and have like harassed me and been like, you can't be saying this, you have to delete this, you are defacing us, you're calling us horrible people. And I'm like, all I'm saying is you guys don't accept me for me. And I've had people like on my Tumblr, on Anon, call me by my dead name and be like, hey, dead name, it's been a while, how are you? And I'm like, there's no way you should be able to find me. And like, part of the LGBT experience is realizing you're an orphan. For a lot of people it is. And I'm glad we have movies like Love, Simon where that's not the case, but for a lot of kids it is. I like that we have things where the gay doesn't die in the end, but coming out is not the end-all be-all gay experience. It's more than that. It's realizing that the world isn't going to give you shit, as in like the world isn't going to give you anything, and that if you want to fit into this world, you have to do it yourself. No one is going to be there to help you, and it's up to you to just make it your own. And I think a lot of cis and straight people don't get that because the world already caters to them on that level. It may not cater to them based on like race or class or like ability level, as in like they're disabled kind of thing, or whatever else, but it like they never have to feel like they're gonna be excluded because of who they're attracted to or because of the body they inhabit. They got that going for them. And I think realizing that there are people out there who still face homophobia and still face transphobia and like they're your next door neighbors kind of thing, I think that makes them very uncomfortable and they don't know how to deal with it. And I realize this has turned into a fucking ramble, but I had onions and I needed to share.